if the Joel came to you today and said, you know, what's one feature you want? You say what you want, we'll get it in the next release. What do you want for Application Express that isn't there now?
That's a tough one. I'm more of a traditionalist, a little bit old school, and I think one of the features that would really do good, not just for Apex, but I think for the image of Apex, would be something like something to do with consistency in management, right? Like right now, there's so many libraries, there's so many frameworks,
Yes.
and it's really easy for me to go out and say, hey, look, I found this new JavaScript library and I dropped it in and I'm doing all my validations like that.
Yeah.
That's good, but the problem with that is like, well, is there ever going to be a version 1.1 of that?
Yeah.
Let alone a 1.1 or anything like that. So the consistency, right? The ability, and I don't think it's a feature as much as it's more of like a methodology the community needs to adopt. Trying to make things look the same, trying to make things more manageable.
Yeah.
Because I've been out to a few clients recently and they've got 4.2 apps and they're disasters. You know, it's almost like you've given people a little bit too much rope to hang themselves with.
Well, I've seen that too. It's very easy when you get started to get really deep into the weeds and have a hard time getting back out of it.
So maybe the feature I'm thinking of is like a beginner mode feature. Where
kind of tone down the
based on a user, you only see 20, 30, 40% of the options.
See, I kind of like that idea.
That are because again, for a citizen developer, and I know that's a big term, and it's a controversial term.
I love the term, actually.
It's a good term because it's how stuff works.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You can call it what you want. I hate buzzwords. It is a buzzword, but there is a role out there that is a citizen developer. Sometimes, like for instance, not going to say the client's name, but I've got one app where they've put not even apex.server calls, not even www.flow.get calls, but raw jQuery AJAX calls in a place on the page that you would never look. So it took me, not a long time, but more than a few minutes to track down, what is this? Where is it being called from?
Yeah.
Oh, I see now. All right, well, I probably want to change that, and I probably want to make that a dynamic action. And
yeah. Well, you know it's an issue when you write utilities to where you can extract all that into a format that you can then query to look specifically for those issues.
Yes.
And
here's the other feature, too, on a similar vein. Version control within Apex.
I'd love to see that.
Again, I mean, having been on the development team and seeing some of the tables, I don't think it would be difficult, although it's not insignificant to pull off, but the ability for me to build an app, and then let's say at Tuesday at 4:02, I want to say this is revision 1. And then all the metadata would get stamped with that revision. And then that would be pushed off to a set of shadow tables. Then I can go ahead and keep building. On Thursday at 10 o'clock, I want to either maybe roll back to revision 1, and maybe even for a specific component, or I want to create revision 2. And again, all the metadata as it is gets stamped, pushed off to these shadow tables.
I kind of like that idea because you could only save the interim changes until you stamp it as a revision.
Right, because you can imagine if you're saving every single save, my OCD of clicking save like 6 times just to make sure it's saved, right, would create 6 revisions, all identical. But having a deliberate save point, right?
Yes.
I mean, think of Subversion, think of Git, right? You're checking in and you're creating some sort of revision saying, this is something I might want to roll back to.
Yes.
And if it's done right and it's put in, shadow tables, it's not going to get in the way of any of the performance of the builder, and it would be a deliberate rollback feature. And I don't think I'd care if it takes 15 seconds to do a rollback. I don't think there's a huge difference because you're not doing it a lot. And if that's what it takes, I'm willing to invest those 15 seconds to roll back.
I would too.
Because there's a huge gap when it comes to version control. The normal best practices is push your PL SQL to version control. I get it. I do that. Everybody gets that. But when it comes to the Apex app, it's still a little clunky. I could take the whole thing. And then split it, which adds more management. Or, I mean, I've seen customers even ask me, should I export by page? I'm like, well, you can, but make sure you also export the app because you have to get the shared components and the properties and stuff like that. So this would solve a lot of that. It would in some sense, be very practical and a very useful feature, but in the other sense, it would give Apex that checkbox of, oh yeah, there's built-in version control. We do versioning very similar to how you see it done.
I hear that a lot from people who
platforms.
are adopting it, is that their architecture team says, well, how are you going to version control this?
Right.
And it's a concern.
Yep.
And I think you've got a good idea. I'd like to see it.
It's one of those features that I do think has a lot of use, but it also solves that political problem of somebody's reading down a checklist saying, does it have version control? No, not really. Oh, you can't use it.
Yeah.
Right? For no other reason than this checklist says you can't use it, even though arguably you can version control probably 80% of it by pushing all your PL SQL and whatnot out to packages.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we still got some time, so what are you pursuing now? What's the next thing that you're looking at? Are you trying to do something emerging, or are you just hanging tight to see what the full 5.1 looks like when it comes out?
Yeah, I think 5.1's exciting. I think the data grid's going to be huge. It's going to open up a lot of opportunity. It's going to make apps more efficient, because I want to go and modify multiple lines out in order, right? I don't have to now edit a line, save it, edit a line, save it. I could do it all at once. Yeah, you could do it with tabular forms, but they were always kind of clunky. And
I'm kind of hoping that eventually we'll see kind of a best of breed where it comes from, kind of the classic report, the interactive report, and that grid concept coming into play. I'd love to see a merger.
Yeah, I do see a merge at some point where, will they ever go away? I don't know, maybe at some point, but look at tabs, right?
Yeah.
Tabs are effectively dead in 4.2. Everybody was using lists, but they're still there, and they're still there today, but you've really got to go out of your way to use them.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. There's a lot of systems out there that, hey, if I have 300 apps and they all use tabs, I don't have an hour per app
to go back
to go in. That's like 2 months worth of work to just make something look like it already does and make it work exactly like it does.
Yeah.
So I don't think you'll see it die, but I do think, the features and the momentum will move,
start driving
from
people
IRs
towards
to the data grid a little bit more.
I'm pretty excited about the data grid. That was something
that's going to be cool.
That's something that we were all talking about years ago, and Carl was really big on that. That was his kind of his ultimate goal, and it's just great now to see it come out and actually see that
the technology just wasn't there back then, and it is now.
It's evolutionary, but I like what I'm seeing. So
Apex Cert is something else that I've been working a lot on.
Yeah.
eCert used to be a commercial product that we built with some Neva, then Encatech, and then once Accenture came in, they basically open sourced eCert and stopped selling it. So now we call it Apex Cert. Top of the list, right? Get the letter A.
Got it.
Smart marketing.
Got to go that way.
It's open source. It's free. You can download it on GitHub. Apex Cert 5, I just put out in beta candidate 2. A couple little glitches, nothing major. It should install. You do need to run it as sys, but it does need to create a bunch of stuff and application context and things like that. But what's nice about it now is I moved the user management out to a separate app.
Good.
So it's also a single workspace install. It used to be with eCert, if you wanted it in every workspace, you had to install the app in every workspace, which if you had, again, 100 workspaces, that's a pain, especially when it came time to patch it. Now we treat it like Apex in some sense. We put it in its own workspace. If we do a patch, it's going to go against that one workspace. Every user in every workspace has access to run Apex Cert for their own applications.
Okay.
The management side, there's another, think of it as like the instance management console. I could then grant you access to run evaluations in my workspace.
Okay.
But I've deliberately got to go out of my way to do that.
Okay.
Or I could make you an administrator and you could run evaluations in any workspace. Or I can make you an approver, which means you could run and approve the exceptions in either one, several, or all workspaces.
Okay.
So I think it's a more solid approach to security. It's there for everybody, and I really think now there's no barrier, right? Everyone should be at least running it, using it, or using some security tool.
Yeah,
right?
just like the instrumentation tools that we use too. It's these are the things that should be permeating our applications and making them better.
But what really the big benefit, when customers use it, and again, the commercial product is very similar to open source. All I did was remove printing because that was PLPDF and that was commercial, but it's largely the same engine. We would find that our customers became more security conscious from day one.
Yeah.
Because if they had to run eCert and they were going to get 5 or 6 things for pages and reports, they knew that was coming. So as they built the page and built the report, they went in and just kind of made the changes, right? Turned off form autocomplete, made sure there was an authorization scheme, turned off row export or set the number of rows to be exported to less than 1,000, and they became proactive.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping, I never heard it specifically, but I think that that proactivity bled over into other technologies that these people worked with, where from day one they were worried about security. Whereas so many times it's you build an app, hey, I spent 50, 100, 200 hours on this app, let me make sure it's secure. It's the absolute worst way to do it because it's not secure. I can guarantee the best developer is going to leave holes. We found, for instance, things that we would find, public pages in the middle of an app. Because people wanted to try something, they turned it on, they tried it,
and they never turned it on.
They got distracted and they forgot about it. So it's a process, right? Security isn't an event, and I think in Kerry Millsap's talk, he said testing isn't an event. You start testing day one, you should also start doing security testing day one. Things will change. You'll bring in a contractor, you'll bring in someone new, they'll make a change that they think is fine, and they'll flip a switch that makes something less secure. You thought it was fine because you left it alone, and the last time you saw it, it was great, but somebody else can easily make that change. So having it run as a scheduled job is great, and that's another feature, is you could set it up to run a group of applications and then send notifications to people, even if they're not an Apex user. So if your manager doesn't have an Apex account, he could receive a daily report that says, here are the 5 apps, here's what their scores were, and then he could take action if he needs to.
That's great stuff. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up, but one last thing. Last night's open mic night was absolutely awesome. You've been doing it for years. My first time, but it was really enjoyable, and we'll just say thank you, and my cup's empty.
Mine isn't. I've been talking too much.
You've been talking too much.
Rare.
But thanks for coming out, and it's great stuff.
Cheers.
Cheers.